Ladies and gentlemen, you know that feeling when you're around someone and everything seems off? He's there, but not really. He responds, but there's a delay. He acts distant, cool, composed, almost like he's trying to prove to the world and to you that he doesn't care. But here's the truth. Just because someone's acting distant doesn't mean they're not hooked. In fact, sometimes the silence screams the loudest. When a man is trying to keep his composure, trying not to show his cards too early, he'll pull back, not because he's uninterested, but because he's overthinking. You text him and he waits before replying, not because he doesn't want to talk, but because he's analyzing every word. He doesn't want to appear too eager. That pause, it's not disinterest, it's calculation, it's tension, it's the tug of war between desire and control. You catch him looking at you when he thinks you're not paying attention. That moment when his gaze lingers just a second too long before he looks away, that's not a coincidence. That's someone who's fighting the gravity pulling him toward you. He remembers things you didn't even think he heard. The way you take your coffee, that story you told once about your childhood, the name of your best friend's dog. He holds on to these details like puzzle pieces. Why? Because he's trying to figure you out. Because you're in his head, occupying space he never expected you to fill. And when you pull back, just a little, when you give him space, focus on yourself, live your life, you'll notice a shift. Suddenly he's checking in, asking how you've been, showing up in ways he wasn't before, not because you manipulated him, but because the silence you left behind echoed louder than your presence. He's the guy who says he's not ready for anything serious, but gets weirdly protective when you mention other men. He's distant, but jealous. Unavailable but possessive, he wants the freedom to act indifferent but the security of knowing you're still there. That contradiction, that's the battle happening in his mind. He doesn't always know how to process the way you affect him. You represent something different. You challenge him, inspire him, unsettle him. You don't fit the mold of what he's used to, and that terrifies him, in the best way. Every time he acts like he's pulled away, he's watching to see if you'll chase, and when you don't, when you hold your ground, when you choose your worth over his confusion, that's when he starts to realize he's already in too deep. So don't waste time decoding every little move. His behavior may be distant, but your power lies in the fact that whether he admits it or not, you're already living rent-free in his mind. He may keep his distance, but deep down he feels your absence more than he ever expected. When you stop showing up the way you used to, when your messages aren't as frequent, when you start prioritizing yourself instead of checking for his replies, that shift shakes him. It makes him question his strategy. It forces him to confront the reality that maybe he's not as in control as he thought. He starts scrolling through old messages, rereading conversations, looking for signs that you still care, signs that he didn't completely mess it up. He'll never admit it out loud, but he's paying attention. He notices when you change your profile picture. He catches when your vibe online shifts. That's not coincidence. That's obsession in denial. He asks mutual friends about you, casually slipping your name into conversations like it's no big deal, like he's just curious. But we both know it's not casual. He's collecting intel. Because he wants to know, are you still thinking about him? Have you moved on? Are you really as unbothered as you seem? Or are you playing the same game he is, trying to look strong while the silence grows louder? And when he sees you out looking confident, unshaken, glowing in your own energy, that image stays with him. It follows him long after the night ends. He doesn't tell his friends. He doesn't post cryptic stories or write poetic captions. No, he keeps it inside, and that's where it starts to burn. Because the moment he realizes he's not the center of your world anymore, something shifts. That false sense of security he had, gone. He starts to notice what he never appreciated, how you listened, how you challenged him, how you brought calm to his chaos. He misses the warmth in your voice, the way you made even the small moments feel important, and he begins to wonder, what if he never finds that again? But here's the truth, your job isn't to convince him of your worth. Your job is to own it. To understand that if he's distant now, it's because he's struggling to process how deeply you've impacted him. And instead of leaning into vulnerability, he's hiding behind aloofness. That's not power, that's fear. You see, there are two kinds of attraction, The surface level spark that fades quickly, and the deeper kind, the one that stays, haunts, lingers. You are the latter. That's why he's conflicted. You didn't just flirt with his ego, you touched something real. He might go quiet for a few days, pretend to be busy, throw himself into distractions, but you'll notice he never really disappears. He keeps a line open, just enough to stay in your orbit, liking a story, replying with a random inside joke, sending a song that just reminded him of you. These aren't accidents, these are breadcrumbs. He wants to know that the door is still open, that he hasn't completely lost his chance, but he won't say it. Not yet, because saying it means admitting he cares. Saying it means surrendering the illusion of control. And for someone who's spent so long trying to look unbothered, that vulnerability is terrifying. But here's the catch. While he's busy strategizing, you're evolving. You're not waiting by the phone. You're building, healing, laughing, expanding. You're attracting people who see your light and aren't afraid to reflect it back to you. And that energy, it's magnetic. Even from a distance, he can feel it. He checks your page late at night. He hovers over the call button and talks himself out of it. He replays moments in his mind that he thought he forgot. That song that used to play in the background when you were with him. It hits differently now. It hurts in a way he can't quite explain because it reminds him of a version of himself that felt more alive, more connected. The version of himself that showed up when he was around you. And he wonders, is it too late? Did I wait too long? Will she even care anymore? These thoughts don't come from nowhere. They come from impact, emotional imprint. You didn't just show up and vanish. You left fingerprints on his heart in a way that distance can't erase. But here's the thing. You're not here to be his emotional crutch. You're not here to be the one he runs to only when it's convenient. You're not going to shrink yourself just to fit into a version of love that requires you to constantly prove your worth. You're the prize, the storm and the calm, the rare blend of strength and softness that makes people reevaluate what they thought they wanted. That's why he's distant, not because you're forgettable, but because you're unforgettable, and that scares him. He might flirt with others, he might post like he's moved on, he might even start something new. But here's what you need to know. Being distracted isn't the same as being over it. Replacing someone physically is easy. Replacing someone emotionally, that's a different story. And deep down, he knows that no one's ever going to replicate the way you made him feel. He'll compare. Even if he doesn't mean to, he'll search for glimpses of you in every new connection. He'll crave the comfort, the spark, the connection, and realize slowly but surely that what he's looking for already passed through his life. That's the moment it hits him. Not when he's scrolling, not when he's out with someone new, but in the quiet, in those still moments where there's no distraction, no noise, just truth. That's when he feels your absence the most. That's when he realizes you weren't just another person. You were the one who made him see himself more clearly. You were the one who made him want to be better, even if he wasn't ready for it at the time. And maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll reach out, ready to be real this time. But that's not the point. The point is you're already enough, with or without the recognition. The reason he's hooked isn't because of how hard you tried. It's because of who you are when you stop trying. It's the way your energy shifts from seeking validation to simply embodying it. That's what leaves the deepest imprint. That's what makes someone realize, long after the connection is gone, that they had something rare. Let him be distant, let him overthink, hold back, try to maintain control. You don't need to chase. Your energy is the magnet, your presence is the catalyst, your absence is the lesson. He'll either grow into the kind of man who can meet you where you are, or he'll spend years wondering how he lost something so real, all because he was too afraid to be seen. He'll scroll past photos of you and pause without realizing. His fingers hover, his breath catches for just a moment, because even if it looks like you've moved on, part of him knows you're still the standard he measures everything else against. And it's not just about looks or charismas, it's something deeper. It's the way you carried yours. Elf, the way you spoke truth without needing to raise your voice. The way you stayed grounded in who you were, even when he couldn't find his footing. He replayed the last words you said more than once, even the small ones, the casual goodbye, the take care, the moment you chose your peace over his chaos. And in that silence, he felt something that rattled him. Not rejection, not defeat, but consequence. Because when someone who loves you well walks away with grace, it's not just an exit. It's a mirror. It reflects back everything you weren't willing to see about yourself. The silence isn't empty. It's full of things left unsaid, full of the tension between what could have been and what actually was. And he doesn't talk about it. He might even pretend it didn't matter. But that's the mask people wear when they don't have the emotional vocabulary to say, I wasn't ready and I didn't know how to hold something real. That kind of honesty takes strength, and if he hasn't built that yet, that's not your burden to carry. You have to understand something about people who act distant while being emotionally hooked. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they feel too much and haven't yet figured out how to deal with it. That avoidance you're seeing, that's a defense mechanism. That's someone trying to protect themselves from getting swallowed by emotion. Because deep connection exposes all the places in us that still need healing. And you, in your authenticity, triggered something in him, something vulnerable, something unfiltered, something that couldn't be controlled, and that terrified him. So he withdrew. He created space, not because he didn't want you, but because he didn't yet know how to deserve you. And while he tries to regain a sense of power by staying distant, you rise. You grow into someone more self-aware, more discerning. You stop confused. In mixed signals for passion, you stop equating emotional inconsistency with depth. You begin to see that love doesn't have to hurt, doesn't have to feel like a guessing game, doesn't have to leave you anxious and overanalyzing every word. You begin to see that someone being in their head about you isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their readiness. And yet you stay soft, not naive, not foolish, but soft in the way that strength allows. Because you know that guarding your heart doesn't mean closing it. It means protecting your peace while still allowing room for real connection to enter. That balance, that's rare. That's why you're unforgettable. So he'll try to move on. He'll seek out what feels easier, what demands less of him emotionally. But there will always be a part of him that knows ease isn't the same as substance. And once someone's tasted depth, even if they weren't ready to hold it, they'll crave it again. Not in the way of desire, but in the ache of missed opportunity. That's what lives in his silence. You'll catch it in the messages that come after long pauses. The late night reach outs, the how have you been texts that seem casual but are really him checking if the door is still open. And you'll feel it, that pull, that temptation to step back into the dance, to reignite what once felt electric. But you'll pause, you'll breathe, you'll remember who you are now, not because you're bitter, not because you need revenge, but because your healing taught you that love isn't proven by how long you wait. It's shown by how well you walk away from what won't rise with you. You see, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not react, not respond, not explain. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's a boundary. And when you live from a place of self-worth, you no longer try to decode other people's confusion. You no longer beg for clarity from people who only bring fog. You start recognizing that being in someone's head doesn't mean you belong in their arms. That emotional impact doesn't always mean emotional availability. That being unforgettable to someone still unwilling to choose you wholeheartedly is not the compliment it once was. You'll watch him circle around your world like a satellite, distant, orbiting, never fully landing, and you'll wish things could have been different, that he could have stepped forward instead of pulling back. But wishing isn't the same as waiting, and you've stopped waiting. You're living now. You're building something real, not just outside of you, but within you. Peace, clarity, a relationship with yourself that no silence can shake. And that's what shifts everything. Because once you've built that foundation, no one can pull the rug from under you. And yes, he'll feel it. Not just the loss of you, but the growth of you. Because he'll realize he didn't just lose someone who cared. He lost someone who saw him. And that kind of loss doesn't fade. It lingers. It visits in the quiet moments. It shows up in future relationships when the conversation lacks depth, when the laughter feels hollow, when he finds himself missing something he can't quite name. But you'll know what it is because you gave it, you were it, and you walked away with your dignity intact. He was hooked, still is. But the problem with being in someone's head is that it's not the same as being in their life. It's not the same as being chosen consistently, clearly, out loud. And you don't settle for being thought about. You don't settle for nostalgia. You don't settle for almost. Let him be distant. Let him wrestle with what he couldn't hold. That's his work now. Yours is to keep becoming, to keep attracting people who aren't afraid of connection, people who don't run from intimacy, people who don't disappear when things get real. Because the more you evolve, the more you realize you were never too much, you were never hard to love, you were just ready for something deeper than what he could offer at the time. And that readiness, that clarity, that peace, that's what makes you unforgettable. So while he plays it cool, acts distant, waits for the right time to show up, you're already rising, already reclaiming your energy, already becoming the kind of person who no longer needs someone else to be sure, just to feel secure. You've turned the chapter, but you haven't closed your heart, just redirected it toward people, places, and experiences that meet you where you are. Fully, openly, without delay, without hesitation. And the next time someone acts distant while clearly being drawn to you, you won't chase, you won't beg, you'll smile, trust the signs, and keep walking, knowing that being in someone's head is not the same as being held in their life. And you're done settling for half-hearted. You were made for full presence. Because once you've tasted full presence, real connection, emotional safety, unwavering energy, you can't go back to crumbs. You can't go back to decoding silence, to wondering what someone's vague behavior means, to waiting for mixed signals to become clear. You don't unlearn your worth, not after everything you've built. So when someone stays on your mind but can't find the courage to stay in your life, you learn not to take it personally. You don't internalize the distance. You don't mistake their confusion for your inadequacy. You recognize it for what it is, a reflection of their emotional ceiling, not your emotional capacity. You learn that people can be captivated by you and still not know what to do with you. They can be drawn to your depth but unprepared to go there themselves. They can crave your light and still choose to sit in the shade because your presence demands growth. And not everyone is ready to rise, especially when rising means confronting their own shadows. But that's the beautiful, frustrating, freeing thing about love. It's not just about chemistry, it's about capacity. And sometimes you meet someone whose desire for you is real, but whose readiness isn't. Someone who wants the benefits of connection without the cost of vulnerability. Someone who feels more than they show, but hides behind indifference because that's safer than surrendering. You learn to spot the signs, the way they keep you at arm's length even when their eyes say otherwise, the way they initiate contact just to pull back again, the way their presence feels inconsistent like the tide, in and out, never quite settling, and instead of chasing, you choose clarity. You don't beg for consistency. You don't try to convince them to care. You simply hold your standard. That's when things shift. Because nothing is more magnetic than someone who's unattached to the outcome. Someone who isn't playing games but isn't playing the fool either. Someone who can feel everything, the pull, the ache, the lingering energy, and still walk forward with grace. He'll feel it. That shift in you, that groundedness, that peace. He'll sense that he's not in control of your emotions anymore, that you're not waiting on his next message, his next move, his next moment of clarity. You're done waiting. And that realization, it stings. Because the power he thought he had, the control he thought silence gave him, is gone. And what's left is the awareness that while he was being distant, you were building distance, not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. He'll come back, maybe, most do, with a carefully timed message, a vague, "I've been thinking about you," or a nostalgic memory dropped into conversation. But by then, you've outgrown the part of you that once clung to crumbs. You've stepped into the version of yourself that knows love doesn't have to be confusing. You no longer see emotional unavailability as a mystery to solve. You see it for what it is, a roadblock. And you're done trying to squeeze through doors that were never meant to open for you. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you realize you don't need closure. That closure isn't something another person grants you. It's a decision you make when their behavior gives you all the information you need. And his distance, that was your closure. Because someone who is truly for you won't leave you questioning. They won't offer attention in fragments. They won't keep you guessing just to maintain their own illusion of control. They'll be consistent, clear, intentional. And if someone isn't showing up that way, it's not a loss, it's protection. It's life's way of rerouting you towards something more aligned. He can think about you all he wants. He can play memories in his head like a highlight reel. But memories aren't presence. Longing isn't showing up. Desire without action is just noise, and you don't entertain noise anymore. You've stepped into a new level of awareness, one where you no longer equate attraction with alignment, one where you stop trying to rewrite red flags into green lights, one where someone being in your head isn't enough. They have to be in your life, fully, authentically, repeatedly. That's your standard now. And anyone who doesn't meet it, they don't get access, not because you're heartless, but because your heart has learned what it deserves. You carry that standard with you in the way you speak, in the way you protect your energy, in the way you no longer give people a front row seat to your life if they're only going to spectate from a distance. And when he watches you glow from afar, when he sees you thriving, grounded, unfazed by the silence he once thought would keep you hooked, he'll feel it. That tug, that ache, that slow creeping realization that while he was overthinking, you were outgrowing. He'll realize he was waiting for the right time while you were making space for the right people. That he was being careful with his words while you were being intentional with your life. That while he was busy guarding his heart, you were learning how to guard your peace. And that kind of peace, it's rare, it's radiant, it doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it simply attracts. Effortlessly, naturally, unapologetically. He may have been the lesson, but you were the shift. Because the person you became through it all, the one who doesn't lower their frequency for someone else's confusion, that is the real gift. That's the version of you that refuses to settle for anything less than certainty. The version that knows love should feel like a safe place, not a puzzle. That consistency is the bare minimum, not a bonus. So if he's still distant, still hesitating, still circling around the edges of your life without ever stepping fully in, let him stay where he is, lost in his head, because you're no longer looking back. You're no longer available for half steps, almosts, or emotional hide and seek. You've walked through the fire and came out softer, smarter, and stronger. You've learned that you don't have to force anything real. That if someone is truly meant to be in your life, they won't need constant convincing. They'll show up not perfectly, but presently. And while he's sitting with all the things he didn't say, all the moves he didn't make, all the chances he let slip, you're already living your next chapter, boldly, openly, without apology. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do, for yourself first.